So, thank you very much, as always, to my dear friends and the President of the Servants of the Buddha for giving me this valuable opportunity from time to time. Really appreciate it. This Vedanupassana in practice, I got inspired to give this talk after listening to a sermon by Venerable Talale Chandrakirti Swami Maharaj. And I do a regular practice with a couple of friends every week, and they found it very useful as well. So I immediately told Dr. Manori that I would like to share this at one of the forthcoming talks, and so therefore here I am. So the merit goes to Chandrakirti Swami Mahansa, and all the Swami Mahansas always like to remind us that the original patency always goes to the Buddha himself, of course. So, Vedanupassana is one of the four foundations of mindfulness. Now, we all have heard the Satara Satipatthana, or the four foundations of mindfulness, referred to as Ekayano Maggo by the Buddha. Now, in the recent past, I hear interesting um, description of Ekayano Maggo not being the only path, but a path, one of the roads. And that does make sense because if you look at the 45 years of the Dhamma teaching of the Buddha and how the various techniques that help different people to attain enlightenment, there doesn't seem to be one path only, rather various paths. So while my Pali understanding is not sufficient to decipher whether it is the only path or one of the paths, from a very practical point of view, it sounds right that this could be one of the paths out of many of the paths possible. Anyway, I thought of mentioning it as the popular uh, wisdom is otherwise. The Satara Satipatthana was described as Satara is obviously four. Sati is mindfulness. Patana is to place. So to place your mindfulness in four areas. For what? And one reason why I love this sermon was it was so practical about the end objective. So why do we do this? It's for the purpose of nirvana. Place your mindfulness in these four areas for the purpose of nirvana. And what are the four areas? To be mindful about the body, about the feelings, about the mind, and the mind objects. So, Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana. And in the scriptures, it goes on to say that Sattan Visuddhya, this is for the cleaning of the mind or the purification of the mind of all things. So why do we need to purify the mind? Purify the mind from what? From the defilements that continuously plunge us into the sorrows, the difficulties that we face. It is interesting to think, and the more I practice, the more I tend to realize that if I am unhappy, if I am feeling anxious, if I am feeling angry or sad or hopeless or any negativity, increasingly it's clear that it is my own doing. As you realize that these emotions, these feelings are always there. It's part of nature. It's part of who you are. And to identify them as natural and normal, and to not get attached to them, either with liking or disliking, just to let them be. And these things just arise and pass away, just like everything. All matters just rise and pass away. And where it becomes a problem is when we start identifying with them and connecting with them and trying to make them ours. So These defilements come from the roots of greed, aversion, and delusion. So I was happy to hear Ms. Anoja read out the minutes from the last talk because it relates to that as well, where the root cause is there are things we like, there are things we don't like, and we believe that um, we need to be able to control these things so that we are mostly getting things we like and mostly we can repel things we don't. And that's the delusion. The like, the wanting, I want to keep things that I like and I want to get rid of things I don't. Both have a wanting. And the whole I part is the delusion there. We misunderstand our own existence. And if I just briefly touch on that part, because that is the whole root cause of all the problems, misunderstanding our own existence. Since the time we started understanding that there's a me, I, myself, and we fell very much in love with me, myself. Um, and that is coming from this feeling of I am existing. I'm existing from the time that I'm aware of myself, maybe around the age of 4 or 5, right up to now. I haven't changed. It's the general feeling that we have. Whereas the impermanence that the Buddha discovered, again in the popular context, we refer to impermanence as the um, the way we grow old, the way we age, fall sick, and die eventually, and how it happens to others. However, now having lived for a fair amount of time in the world, passing half a century, you realize that your other friends from many other religions, we all come to the same point after some time. We all realize that life was never the beautiful story that we thought it would. Um, and looking back, adults think that childhood was fun and nice and innocent. But if you recall what childhood was like, it was also waiting for better times to come, isn't it? To be free from the rules of your parents and to be earning some income as an adult so that you can decide what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it. And then when you become an adult and you think everything is now going to be really great, it has its own other problems and issues to solve. So when you live about 40, 50, 60, 70 plus years, you realize that um, whatever we have been looking for, mostly it is not there, but there's a lot of pain and discomfort in that looking process. So, and then one comes to think, if anybody can understand it, do you need a Sammasambuddha to come and tell that the impermanence of aging, the impermanence of falling sick and dying and all of that is a problem because people naturally come to that conclusion. However, if you really understand the anicca dukkha, nothing, this present moment, the impermanence, the suffering, and the non-self right now, now that is an extraordinary thing. It takes an extraordinary being to be able to figure that out. So we are all born in a certain way. It's almost like if you look at it like a factory manufacturing vehicles, we are no different because the blueprint is the same for any human being and any being for that matter. But if we stick with the human beings, our body is made of very tiny particles, so small that the eye cannot see. And it is changing at a very fast pace. It is rising, changing, and decaying, and rising, changing, and decaying once again. And the mind is changing even faster. It's only rising and passing away. There's no time to even change. Rising and passing, rising. So we are a combination of this, and it's happening at such a rapid speed. It is like the ring of fire, right? In a procession, you have seen the rings of fire. If you just take a stick and light it on the two ends, it's just a stick with two fireballs at the two ends. But if you start turning it very skillfully, like they do in the processions, very soon you see a ring of fire. Now, intellectually, we know that it's two fireballs moving at a very rapid speed. How rapid? Just faster than your eye shutter speed. Your eye can detect the speed, and if you can turn it faster than, looks like a ring. So our perception of the ring, there's a ring of fire, but the reality is there is no ring of fire. Now imagine a child and a parent standing and watching this, and the child telling, "Please buy me that ring of fire. I want to take it home. It's so beautiful." And the parent knows that it does not exist. It appears to exist, but it's not real. So we are the same, no different. And that is because we look at our world from the Panchaskanda point of view. That is, we try to understand this world from our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Now, that understanding is very, very minimal because of the scope that program. It runs at a very limited scope. And since almost all human beings like to spend their time in this space, it's most often the fact that this is not the real life. It's a delusion to most human beings. Now, what makes the Buddha extraordinary is he was also in the same program. He was also in the same hamster wheel, right? Just stuck in one place, running, 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 and the wheel is stuck in one place, and then he was dissatisfied, like many others during the time. The Hindu religion is 6,000 years old. People were looking for answers for more than 6,000 years. Buddhism, in comparison, is only 2,600 years old. So he too, like many before him, was looking for the answer. And not satisfied with any of the answers that was available in the world. He started looking for it himself. And um, probably thought, okay, if the problems are starting from this body and the mind, maybe the solution is also inside this body and started looking inside. And the whole Vipassana technique is the technique this extraordinary human being introduced to the world for the first time and to figure out what's going on. And what he discovered was, yes, the Panchaskanda is one program, and that is where it is easy to live there. It is easy to get pulled and just continuously chase things you like and chase away things you don't like and try to control everything around you so that it fits you. And whereas there's another way. Now that is not a natural thing. We are not used to. But if you start accessing it slowly and over a period of time, you start getting used to it. And as you get used to it, you see the futility or the uselessness, the lack of value in the Panchaskanda way of living. And you gradually shift to the other way. And when that shift becomes complete, you are an enlightened being. So these were not even clear at the time uh, we were growing up in this country. The textbooks or the Dhamma sermons did not go into this detail. But gradually now there's a revival in the last, I would say, 50 years or so. There's a huge revival in the last maybe 20 years of the Dhamma. And increasingly you can see um, great Dhamma teachers starting by saying, the Nibbana you are looking for, it's right here, it's inside you, you are born with it. You just can't access it because you have never been interested. And the Satara Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness, is actually about developing a practice gradually so that you start accessing something that is already innately inside you. And you find that peaceful, you find that purposeful, you find value in it. And gradually you find what you were doing all these years, not that meaningful, not that purposeful, and not that valuable. And as this transition happens, and as you start realizing where you need to spend more time, then you are clearly on a Dhamma path, right? And this whole Sovan, Sakurdagami, Anagami, Arihat, all those steps happen in that path. For some, it happens faster in one day. For some, it happens step by step as it is laid out. So, so where does it all bring us to today in this talk? It's all about um, how do we cleanse our mind? How do we cleanse our mind from the natural greed, aversion, and delusion that we have lived with all our lives? Right? Now, obviously, all of you in this uh, Dhamma, you are in the path, so you are pretty aware, and you are well journeying on that path. So it's not anything brand new that you are into. And the nature of the Dhamma is the more you listen, uh, the more clarity it gives. And that is why the Mangala Sutra, it is recommended that you listen regularly to the Dhamma lesson and you practice regularly also. And you have discussions regularly also, because it all leads to more inner clarity in your own. So as long as there's greed, aversion, and illusion, our mind is clouded with the defilement. So what do we need to do? We need to purify our mind. How do we do that? So in this talk, Venerable Chandrakirti suggests you first stop the wrongdoings that take place due to this greed, aversion, and delusion. What are the wrongdoings? So wrongdoings take place from our body through our action and through our words. So by practicing sila, you can actually make sure that your body and your words are actually helping you to purify your mind. So this means you have to be always on the watch out, high alert on in your day-to-day conversation. Am I saying useful things? Am I saying uh, things in a soft way versus a harsh way? Am I saying things that is intentionally hurting someone versus can I be more compassionate? And the body, of course. Uh, I believe that most of us are quite in control of our body, but nevertheless, the urge to do wrongdoing through your body, you need to be alert all the time. So see them. And what about the wrongdoings that take place in the mind? And that is where samadhi. So when you are contemplating on wholesome mental objects like metta, karuna. Karuna is compassion, metta is loving kindness. Or if you are simply, if you think of the Satara Brahma Viharana, it is Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekha. So Mudita is blessing others in the face of their good fortune, right? May they get more. Um, those things can, so let me give a small example of how you can keep your mind purified uh, on a day-to-day basis. So let's say you are traveling somewhere and you can see others on the road and you can silently bless them, saying, may you go safely, may you go peacefully, may your day be wonderful. So that way you're keeping your mind clear. So now in order to purify your mind, we need to understand that our mind has two qualities. And this whole greed and aversion, our mind tends to get attracted to, drawn to things we like and things we think is right. And we hate, we dislike, we want to move away from things that we dislike or we think is wrong. So these two qualities. Now, the way the Buddha explained this and how this relates to Vedanupassana, when you come across something you like, there is a feeling that gets generated, a pleasant feeling. And when you come across something you don't like, an unpleasant feeling gets generated. And when you come across something where you have a neutral feeling to it, neutral feeling gets generated. So this Vedanupassana is about observing your feelings so that you can be on alert whenever a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling gets generated, because you know that your reaction or the samskara is going to get formed based on, right? So if you see an ice cream and you think, oh, I want this ice cream. Yeah, you can think about, so my eye saw a visual object. And when the eye and the visual object connects with the mind's attention, eye consciousness arises. With that eye consciousness, there is a passer, which is a touch. And that touch leads to generating of a feeling. And that feeling is based on whether you like what you saw or whether you dislike what you saw. So while an ice cream can generate a pleasant visual, a pleasant feeling, let's say as you step out of your house, you see a pile of dog food, and that for many people they'll find it unpleasant, and that will create unpleasant sensations. So whether your feelings are pleasant or unpleasant depends on your preconceived notion about are they good or bad, are they right or wrong, or are they things you like or don't like. Now, the interesting thing here is when did we decide on these things? Now, Western research on not on this whole Vedanupassana, but Western research done on how do we decide on things, our perceptions? How do we decide on what we like and we don't like? What is right and what is not right? What is good and what is bad? Interestingly, they say that 75% of your decisions you make before the age of 15. So no wonder the world is in a disarray and there are so many problems because before the age of 15, you're quite immature and you have decided on very important things in your life, 75% of the things. And this is why you say, I take my tea in this way. And you say it in a way that it's like a world truth. That's the only way it can be done. There's no flexibility in it. There's no conversation in it. There's no open-mindedness in it, right? So when you think about your sanya or your perception that it was formed when you're quite immature, and anyway your sanyas form as with a very strong egoistic um, view of yourself, me, myself, I. And imagine 8 billion of us on this planet. On a daily basis, we are trying to control things so that what I like, what I think is good, and what I think is right, I try to acquire. And what I don't like, what I think is bad, and what I think is wrong, I try to dispel. And when you think of the subjectivity around all of this, it is no wonder that we live in such dissatisfaction. So, um, so this is happening because of our ignorance, and we see that, we understand. So what do we do? How do we practice this? Now, here there are three interesting things, three interesting techniques called Atapi, Sampajano, and Satima. Atapi is to put the right effort to overcome defilements, overcome the creating of new sun. Sampajano is to take action with wisdom. Satima is to take action with mind. So in practice, how does this happen? So when a feeling occurs, first is to know that a feeling has occurred. So how do we do this? And this is about doing this in daily life, right? So let's say that you come across uh, an ice cream, picture of an ice cream. And as your eye sees the visual object and your mind's attention comes together and eye consciousness arises, you realize that you are seeing an ice cream visual. And as you see this, all your past memories, which are stored in your sun, triggers what we call the whole, the pleasant or unpleasant feelings associated with those past memories. So Rupa Vedana Sanya. So initially the Vedana, as your eye sees a visual, initially it's a neutral feeling. The Rupa Vedana, then comes Sanya. Then through your past memories, your perception, your judgment about it gets analyzed. And then once the analysis is complete and the result is like, oh, ice cream, I have always loved ice cream. Then that triggers the change of the feeling to be pleasant. Pleasant feelings run through your body. The Rupa Vedana Sanya. And then Sankhara. So Sankhara is about how we are going to respond. So your mind starts getting ready to respond. Words start forming, actions start forming. The mind response will be, I need to get an ice cream. Now you just saw a visual. So you start planning. Okay, today, while coming back from there, I will stop at that X place and buy their ice cream there. Right. And then you may actually tell this to somebody, let's say to your spouse or your friend, I'm going to pick up an ice cream on the way from there. Would you like to join? And then your action is to actually do it. So this whole samskara is about creating karmic results, which will take you to your rebirth. Right? So what the Buddha discovered is that when your eye and a visual object come together with the mind's attention and face eye consciousness, that is very automatic, right? That flows anyway. And then initially it's a neutral feeling until your past memories decipher it as to whether it is something you like, something you dislike, or something you don't care about. Now, and that is the sanya. Now, with the practice, with time, as you start understanding that this Panchaskanda is one program, and then there's another program, which is actually the Nibbanic bliss, you start realizing the whole Anitya Dukkha Anatta, which was so well explained in the previous talk. And your perception changes to the realization that everything is impermanent, is changing at a very rapid speed. And to put your trust or to put your hopes in acquiring and finding some satisfaction through such rapid change is asking for trouble. It's all going to culminate in dissatisfaction. And all of this is uh, for the purpose of a person that doesn't even exist. So as you get clarity on this, your likelihood of going behind these things, drawn to them like a slave, again and again and again, starts diminishing, starts losing its value. And your perceptions slowly shift to everything is impermanent, everything is changing at a such rapid speed. And your indulgences change into what do I need to eat for the purpose of survival, right? Right now, it is all about what do I need to eat because eating is such fun, eating is such pleasure. And the more we do it, the more we think, okay, when is my next meal? And we start planning it, something very nice and delightful for the evening meal, right? It's a never ending, it's incessant, like the hamster on the hamster wheel. Just keep running, right? Just from one to another, one to another. But when you pause and when you realize that all of this is actually you're caught in a trap. None of this is going to ever give you a satisfaction that you are going to say that now finally I have had everything I need. It's never going to. Not this road, not this path. Yeah. But there's another path. There's another path that's going to give you that feeling of finally I don't need anything anymore. That I have finally found my peace. And that is to observe. Start observing this reality. Because only by observing this reality, you come to realize the lack of value. You start to realize that how much of a slave you have been to this, and how much you finally realize that this is what the Buddha was talking about. Ignorance. This is the ignorance, right? So how do you practice this? When a feeling occurs, um, so let's come back to the ice cream, right? So your eye and the ice cream, it is the visual object and the mind attention, they came together, eye consciousness that created the whole puzzle, and through that became the feeling. And the feelings got deciphered through your perceptions, and pleasant sensation flooded your mind as well. So when a feeling occurs of, ice cream, right? First thing is to know that a pleasant sensation is occurring. And now there is greed. Greed is feeling like that. Right? There's a lot of wanting of this ice cream. So that is the first thing. And then what do we do? Then it is about thinking about or just observing, all right, um, how does this process work? And if I continue to be in the whole Panchaskanda uh, place, then naturally, without thinking, I will go into that reaction of, oh, I want to, right? I want to get an ice cream. Oh, I want an ice cream now. Sometimes you get that feeling, isn't it? I want an ice cream right now. Let me order it through Uber Eats. Yeah. So then observe that craving. Observe in another sermon by another monk, I remember hearing it as a pressure. It's a big pressure that starts building inside you. And if you look at any physical science of the world, whenever a pressure gets built, that pressure has to get relieved. So usually we relieve that pressure by taking that action or speaking those words. But there is another way, the way the Buddha said, if you start observing, that pressure starts diminishing. You just observe. Ah, this is what I'm living. I'm becoming a Christian. Do I really need this? I remember once a friend told me because uh, I was trying to diet and I just couldn't. I was becoming such a foodie. And if I think of a food, if I see a food, um, especially if I see a food, I so much want to reach out and take it. And I asked my friend who seemed to be quite disciplined, like, how does he do it? And he said, try the 21-second challenge. When you think that you want something, just observe it for 21 seconds. And he said, usually you don't even have to wait 20. Just like everything in this world rises, changes, and passes away, your urge also is simply a part of the other phenomenon. It rises, changes, and passes. So if you don't engage it, if you just let it be, you can see it passing away. And that's such an amazing thing. And this is what the Buddha is actually telling. First, observe that a feeling has occurred, and then start observing that. Here we are finding out, we are discovering, we are the science lab. The experiment is myself. You are discovering what are you really made of. How does this really work? This mind and body connection. And and then gradually you start realizing that you are bombarded with so many inputs, such a lot of inputs from this world. Bombarded. So if you start observing where, and if you look at this Panchaskanda process, right? This process is about um, observing something. So if it is the eye, it's a visual object. If it is the ear, it is a sound object. If it is your nose, it's a smell object. If it is your tongue, it's a taste object. If it is your body, it's a touch object. If it is your mind, it's your thoughts, right? So these are the six sense doors and the six sense objects. Now, um, how do we know that we are seeing something? How do we know that we are hearing something? It is that moment when your mind's attention actually goes and connects the sense object and the sense door, right? So one way to start observing this process is to observe where is my mind's attention. Right? If you just start observing where is my mind's attention, you will notice as your attention is moving, the feelings that come with each of those. So if you just close your eyes and sit still and start observing this, which is something we are going to do shortly, you will notice that, okay, when I close my eyes and still shut, we can we can temporarily take as our nose and tongue is also shut down because there's nothing really specific going on here at this moment to smell or to taste. And then that will leave us with our ear sense door, our body sense door, and our mind sense door. So we will hear various things. Our body will feel various things, and various thoughts will come forward. Now, each time you notice, you can also notice what is the feeling that got generated with you. So if you sit still and close your eyes and start observing, you will hear a sound, for example. Right now where I am, I can hear the fan. Now, if you at a very coarse level, you will not see whether the feeling is pleasant or unpleasant, right? Because these feelings can be very, very subtle. Yeah. So as you observe, maybe if a dog is barking, or maybe if some sound is disturbing you, then you may observe that that sound has generated an unpleasant feeling inside, right? Because you don't like it. And then you can start observing, right. So let's say the dog is barking. And then you can observe in yourself how your mind, your words, and your body is now starting to form actions, reactions, right? Can somebody quieten that dog, please? I'm trying to meditate here. Or can someone put the dog to that room and close the door, please? Or give that dog a biscuit and calm him down, please, right? Or let's say your spouse is watching TV and the sound, and that is really irritating. So then you can see how the words and the thoughts are forming in your. I need to go and tell him to turn it down. Right? Can't you see I'm trying to meditate? And you might get even annoyed. Oh, this is so selfish of him. right? Surely he should think that I'm about to meditate. So you can start seeing how habitually these reactions start arising from a negative place, right? And all this negativity is defined as aversion, right? All mind irritations, everything comes in there. So just observing this is a starting. Just observing these pleasant feelings and these unpleasant feelings. Now, the Buddha said that Vedana is like a water bubble. Now, what did he mean by that? He brings so extraordinary metaphors or examples from the normal natural world. So imagine you tossed a pebble into a pond, and there'll be some bubbles that will just come up and just disappear in a second, right? And that is what he said. Vedana is like a water bubble. Yeah. Now, if you're sitting in a sofa or a comfortable chair and listening, now we have been sitting from 4:30 and now it is 5:13, so nearly 45. You might think that, well, it's certainly no water bubble. When I sat down, it was very comfortable. But now, of course, I'm feeling a bit of a discomfort because I was sitting for 45 minutes, right? And that is because, once again, it's like the ring of fire. Our normal senses are not able to decipher what is really going on. Okay, and that is why, if you really look at it in this Western world of science, where they are always relying on external factors to explain how what is going on, and mostly it is in your normal sense to space. But if in order to really find out what's going on, you have to go inside through what the Buddha discovered, the Vipassana technique, or this Satara Satipatthana, or mindfulness techniques to really understand. So your feelings disappearing like a water bubble is something you will see as you practice this. It is not something that's going to be obvious um, for the normal way we are using our senses, right? So so when we start, um, so another thing is like, let's say now you can see me and you can hear, right? What you can see, you may have a pleasant feeling, or you may have an unpleasant feeling, or you may have a neutral feeling. What you can hear, again, can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral at a very, very subtle, right? Again, we might think that I can both see and I can both hear, both at the same time. But we know that the mind can do only one thing at a time. We know this, right? But um, since the speed is at such massive levels, it we cannot decipher it. So therefore, it looks like, it feels like that I can see and hear at the same time, right? So if you come back to Satima, Sampajana, and Atati, the part of the practice, Satima, right? So be mindful and recognize a feeling. Oh, is this pleasant? Or is this unpleasant? If it is pleasant, I will probably feel like responding in a certain way. If this is unpleasant, I'll feel like responding in a certain way, right? Sampajana. What is this sampajana? Then that is where, sorry, so the satima is about simply recognizing the feeling, and sampajana is it's about this intellectual understanding of it, that now there's a pleasant feeling, so most likely I will be creating sankhara of this type based on this pleasant feeling. Or now there's unpleasant feeling, and I will create sankhara based on. So, for example, the ice cream, the sankhara is you make a plan to have an ice cream. Or the doggy poop, you make a plan to tell off your neighbor who let the dog out in front of your gate, um, and so on. So that is the sampajan, the intellectual understanding based on the mindfulness. And then the atapi is where you need to make the effort. This is what the Buddha called the right effort. So when you recognize that pleasant feelings have come, and now defilements are going to come based on greed, or unpleasant feelings have come, now defilements are going to get generated based on aversion, or neutral feelings have come, and again, some kind of a reaction might happen based on this whole neutral feeling. And instead, you need to generate wholesome reactions, wholesome mental thoughts. So, for example, when let's say it's about the dog poop, right? As you step out of your house, you nearly step into some dog poop, and you get annoyed and irritated. that somebody else's dog has come and done that in front of your house, and uh, um, the feeling, that unpleasant feeling, is accompanied with this irritation and irritable feelings. Now, irritable thoughts start invading your mind space. How dare my neighbor? No, what do you say, such a selfish person. Um, there is no sensitivity towards others who is an ecosystem. You have to be sensitive towards each other. But then you realize, oh, wait, Satima. Okay, now an unpleasant feeling has arisen. And Sampajan, there is uh, defilement now taking place. I am going to respond in a negative way. What I need to do instead is generate some metta, right? Yes, my neighbor, I need to talk to my neighbor and remind myself to try and prevent his dog from doing this, right? My neighbor is such a person, maybe just telling him is not going to do, but what is the point of fighting with such a person? Um, so therefore, with kindness and compassion, I will tell him that. But right now, my mind is a bit irritated. This is not the time to do that, because if I try to speak to him now, because of this irritable mind, I'll probably be harsher than. So maybe later in the day or late in the evening, I will just have a chat and say, friend, uh, is there something you can do about it? Because I do see that in spite of us talking, it's still repeating. And for whatever the reason, if my neighbor does not um, does not do the right thing, what I supposed to do, right? So do you want to go down that path of defilements and lean into your irritability and build on the thoughts of this is such a useless guy, he's so selfish, this is so unfair, I'm going to teach him a lesson? Or do you want to say that, when you're living in this world, there are going to be different kinds of people, and it happens to be that I have to live with a neighbor who is not considerate towards others. And there are only two things I can do. I can change my neighborhood, which is not worth the trouble, or I can be a bit mindful when I step out in that there could be dog food and I need to step around. Okay. Now you might think that that is not the right way to live in the world, but I am talking about it from a place of attaining nibbana, right? So if you feel like going and changing the world, making it a better place by helping people be more considerate, by all means, please do it. But if your aim is to attain nibbana, then you need to only focus about your defilements, the feelings that arise in you, whether they're pleasant and lead to greed-based defilements, or are they unpleasant and leading to aversion-based defilements, and recognize the ignorance-based defilements that come in, that makes you want to control everything, including your neighbor, and make him a better person so that you can live a better life. And you can step out of your gate and not step onto those foot. Okay? So this is the whole Vedanupassana in practice that I wanted to share with you. So now let us practice, and the practice is exactly the same. So if you have been sitting for some time, it will be uncomfortable. So maybe you want to just stand up a bit and stretch a bit and then sit down for 10 minutes of, of a meditation, right? Leaving room for a bit of a talk as well, Q&As as well. So now sit comfortably and gently close your eyes and bring your mind to the present moment. How do you bring your mind to the present moment? Bring your attention to your head, to your upper body, lower body, and your feet. Bring your attention to your feet, lower body, upper body, and your head. So now you are in the present moment. You are aware of your body, seated for a meditation. Now sit quietly and just observe. What are the thoughts that come? What are the sounds what are the various things you feel on your body? Given that we have been sitting for more than 50 minutes now, there will be plenty of things to observe in your body. There will be various discomforts, and these are very good places to practice. If there's a discomfort, let's say in your knee, you can observe it. This is discomfort. And that discomfort is creating unpleasant feeling. And with this unpleasant feeling comes a need of wanting to change. Now you can see the reaction. So you are aware of the body, um, something happening in the body. You are aware of the feeling, and you are aware of the reaction. And you can just observe this. You can just observe. If you have never done this before, it can be hard to observe something that is causing you discomfort. But it's also very interesting to observe something that is causing you discomfort. You can see the pressure that I spoke about, the pressure to do something, pressure building up, change this. Your mind must be yelling at you, change, change, change to a more comfortable posture. Yeah. So let us observe for 10 minutes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now gently open your eyes. So thank you very much once again for this opportunity to share this talk on Vedanupassana in practice. Dr. Manori, I would like to open now for any questions, comments, thoughts, please.
Much merit to you, Nadeesha, for that very useful and how nicely you use those three words, Satima, Sampajano, and Atapi. In that order, be mindful, be wise, or look at it. And then also from the point of view of being wholesome and not unwholesome. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. You can all unmute yourselves. That possibilities there are, though you have been muted on entry. You can unmute yourself. So please unmute and ask the any question. Anybody? To just start, then Nadeesha, I just like to say that you started with the ekaya no. I mean, not feeling, but just that aspect, that word. Apparently, eka is one, right? That is definite. I mean, I don't know Pali, but I'm saying there are sutras where eka ro, eka dittu is what to tell your only daughter. There is a sutta, eka dittu. So one, it's amazing. The diversity of the sutras also. But anyway, eka is that. So eka yano is that all these four are, it's a unidirectional. Because apparently the word eka yano has been used only in two sutras. This one and the one after that in the Majjhima Nikaya, after the Satipatthana, I think. But they mean the direction of all four are the same. So he said, I'm giving you four directions which are all directed in the same way, is what it means. No, it's not saying it's the only one.
Right. Thank you for that.
At least this is how it's been explained by, and including Ajahn Brahmavanso explains it this way.
Thank you. How about our good friend, Miss Anoja? Would you like to share anything, any comments?
Well, thank you very much, Nadeesha, for that very clear explanation. Now, actually, while I was practicing it according to what you said, in terms of bodily feelings and so on, it's very straightforward and very simple. And one can sort of grasp the concept and, and the thing is, the moment you recognize it, if there's some irritation, the moment you recognize it, it goes away. However, I was thinking that the more difficult things are when it comes to various problems people have in life, where it's a much more complex thing than simply observing a bodily feeling which results in either like or dislike, or seeing some object and then having a thought of like or dislike. When it comes to various problems people have to face in life, which could be economic problems or social problems or anything, those complex situations lead to very complex and much more profound feelings, which I think are much more difficult to overcome. So of course, with an attitude of upekka and not causing those maybe unpleasant problems or whatever it is to result in further actions and words which could then be which could form sankaras, that certainly is a way of dealing with those things. But in terms of overcoming, I think those are more difficult.
Absolutely, Anuja. Thank you so much for raising it. So recently, I have a young friend whose wife is pregnant for the first time, and the scan showed that it's twins. And in the fourth month, there was a bit of a disturbance, but it settled. However, it can be very stressful, right? And that's an extreme situation, I'm showing, life and death. However, even in such a situation, um, the young husband, I asked him, I said, I'm pretty sure your wife is totally stressed and traumatized, because for a mother to be pregnant and to be with the joyful hope of having twins, and then for a moment, very unsettling moment, to think that it's all going to get lost, can be very traumatizing. How are you managing? And and he said something interesting. So he's of a different faith. He said, I was very upset too, but ultimately I thought, look, in this world things happen. Sometimes a child is born, sometimes a child is not born, and um, I just need to see which one of these is being granted to, right? So even in an extreme situation of life and death, one can take an advanced view of none of these things is in our control anyway to start with. And the biggest thing that can happen is I can die tonight, right? That's a very, very likely possibility. And in the face of that, as the worst case scenario, whatever I'm going through now, how does that how does that feel relatively, right? So um, there are various ways people try to find their peace. And this young husband, knowing that it's still the fourth month and there's another 5, 6 months of this to go through, he has found his peace in that way, placing complete faith and hope, um, in the Lord, and accepting it, right? Whatever it is, it's not my choice, right? And I believe that that is a very realistic way of living, isn't it? Right? So whether it is economic issues, if you take our country, people are leaving this country, right? In my entire life, I'm 52 now. My entire life, people had told me, this is not a country to live in. You must leave. And they left, their children left, right? However, there's also still 21 million people living here, choosing to stay. So I have always thought, yeah, there are problems here. But if I go somewhere else, there'll be different kinds of problems there, right? And I have to anyway adapt to those. I might as well adapt to these. The non-devils are better than none, sort of thing. So one realization I have come in life is, when you are a child, you think one day when I'm an adult, all my problems are gone. Because as a child, you think your parents are controlling your life. Then as an adult, you realize, okay, great. Now I am in control of my life. But hey, guess what? I need to earn a living. So you start earning a living. And then you are like, hey, this is a bit lonely. I need a spouse. So you get a spouse. And then it's like, hey, I need children. So then you get children. So with each decision, your problems magnify, right? And then comes a point where it's too far to turn back. They suddenly have a family and children and obligations. And then you're like, what if I didn't go through all of this? What if I was single? But you know that if you were single, you're probably thinking that, not being single is the better life. And when you're married, you think being single is the better life. So it's this whole dissatisfaction, this whole searching for this happiness, this satisfaction. And let's say your transport is the bus, right? And we know it can be good. Sometimes it's bad. Sometimes. Then you think, okay, let me get a car. Right? And with that comes its own problems. There's an insurance, there's repairs, there's accidents, there's petrol. Um, and then there's every 5 years you need to change your car, whatever, right? So life is like that. And in that whole process, I think where I find my peace is I whenever I get upset or traumatized about something, I just ask myself 3 questions that bring me back to being grounded. the first question I ask myself is, am I dead yet? And usually the answer is no. And then it reminds me that, okay, as long as I am alive, I can do something. I can take some wholesome positive action. Second question I ask myself is, are the people that is very important in my life, are they dead yet? And usually the answer is no. One day the answer will be yes, but usually it's no. And then I'm like, okay, so it's not as bad as that. Third question I ask myself is, am I having some means of economic livelihood? And if the answer is yes, I have told myself that if the answer is yes for these three questions, everything else can be disregarded in that. Okay, I am alive. Some other people that is meaningful for me is alive, and I still have a way of earning something to make a living, and everything else is secondary. So that has helped me find my peace. So let me give an example. Let's say my phone dropped and got damaged and I had to buy a new phone. Now that's a loss. Let's say something happened and there's a major repair in your house. Let's say somebody fell sick, right? Let's say you lost your job or whatever, right? But when you ground yourself on, look, what is the worst that can happen? And another thing, the Buddha always said, if you think something is happening only to you, that is very, very painful. But if you make it commonplace and if you suddenly realize that, oh my goodness, everything happens to everybody and I am just another everybody. And Ajahn Brahm said this the best. He said, people ask, God, why me? And he said, God should ask, why not you? Right? What is so special about you that you should be spared? Right? And I think those are the kind of things that comes under the whole sampajana part of it. That when these feelings arise, feelings of helplessness, feelings of hopelessness, feelings of irritation, and so on. Number one is to understand that our own ignorance has created. The ignorance is coming from the fact that I believe that I exist and that I need to control all of these things to my liking. Right? That is the number one reason. And then to think that, look, I am no different to other things in nature, which has arisen due to a reason, and it's just going to fall apart when the reason ceases to exist, right? And in that gap is called living. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. This, sorry, Samanthi has asked
Samantha
in
has
the chat.
asked, yes. Shall
Thank
I?
you for the valuable session. How can one increase the sati to easily catch the feeling? Is it just by continued practice? Yes, Samanthi, absolutely. So, the first step is to know whether you are feeling pleasant or unpleasant. And like Ms. Anoja said just now, some feelings are very easy to catch. Like let's say your back is paining, your shoulders are paining by sitting, right? And is it a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling? Obviously, it's an unpleasant feeling, right? Let's say now after this session, you are going to have a hot chocolate or a cup of tea or a coffee. And as you sip it, and as that warm liquid flows through you, nice pleasant feelings are going to generate. Yeah. So start with the obvious places, right? And then, like Ms. Anuja said, there'll be many things that is not that obvious because the feelings are very subtle. But start with the obvious ones. Samantha, I hope that answered your question.
Samantha?
Yeah, I was just trying to see how to unmute. Yeah, thank you, Nadeesha. Yeah, I'll start from the simple ones first and then keep practicing. And then it's just a case of, yeah, repeating it. But that's really helpful. Thank you, Saad. It's a lovely session. Really enjoyed it. I learned
Just
a
to
lot.
add to Samantha, because it will really help us, and most of us in Sri Lanka now it is 5:50, and you'll probably go now for your evening tea, right? I always suggest to people to do this with your evening tea or coffee. So you take one sip, and as that warm and sweet liquid nourishes you and awakens the taste buds, you will be filled with a pleasant feeling, right? And now, before you take the second sip, just observe. There will be such a urge coming, right? Such a urge that is quote unquote telling you, come on, take the next sip. What are you waiting for? Just take it. I can't wait. I want to taste the next sip, right? That is that is the urge, that pressure that the Buddha also saw, that is really governing all of our actions in a almost mad frenzy, right? That pressure is a mad frenzy, right? So with each step, just pause and observe before you take the other one. This is that pressure. This is what is causing me when I see that dog poop without thinking. And if I see my neighbor, just to shout at the neighbor saying, can't you please, contain your dog? How can you be so inconsiderate, right? That is what just lets out that reaction, that urge, that pressure. If you can observe that urge, if you can observe that pressure, and like Anoja said, it just goes down. Just the observation.
Brilliant. Okay, I practice it. I'll let you know. Thank you. Sadhu,
Thank you.
sadhu, sadhu.
Right. I think we can close that now. But as of course, one thing, Nadeesha, now their friend had a Lord and said, Lord will, but even those of us who don't have a Lord to think of that kind of, we have what the Buddha said, well, you'll have to accept things as it is. Yatha bhutanya,
Yeah,
you take it as it is. So whether the
absolutely.
twins are to be born or not, you do everything you can. But then if it's not to be, it's not to be. That's it.
Exactly. Exactly. And the pace of letting go, right? The pace of letting go um of that is not your choice to start with. That was not your call.
So we go back to the Das Media Galler's talk. If you see a perception is a view or an opinion. Everything is changing, so the view or opinion is not, even if you see there's a social problem or whatever, there are things happening in the world, well, nothing is permanent, right? And if there is nothing that you can do about it, then I don't think you should be fretting and fuming on that, because then you are just becoming not able to, there are unwholesome thoughts in you of aversion. So you have to stop. And a
Absolutely.
lot of
And
people are very
also,
worried about something that's happening in another part of the country, which is absolutely correct. But if there's nothing one can do, that's it.
also, I would like to add something here, right? Because there is also this whole feeling of righteousness. Now, morality, righteousness, upholding law and order, upholding what is right, the Dhamma, and so on. So we need to be thankful for people who actually take to the street or write to the authorities when in the face of sheer injustice, right? And if there's something we can do to help them, that is also something. However, in this whole journey to Nibbana, I believe that what even the Buddha recommended was to be very self-focused and to really mind your own business and get to that state
Look
first.
within, look within.
Look
This,
within first. And after you become an arahant, then you are most free to go and solve the problems of the world. Because if you try to do that first, you will miss this samsara life too, and you have to wait for your next turn, which you never can be sure whether you'll get it, right? So many people, I think, get confused because many people have told me, but you are telling me to ignore my inconsiderate neighbor and just focus on my aversion and convert it into metta and karuna. And I said, that is if you want to get to nibbana this life. If you want to do some social reforms, please. And if you want to postpone nibbana to another life, then that is your choice, right? But if you want to get to nibbana in this lifetime, you need to focus on your feelings, your reactions, and how you can be in a compassionate, loving, kind state where you are accepting, letting go, flexible, and broad-minded. Yeah.
thank you. So it is no question about it. One has to be selfish to be selfless.
Yes. I would agree. Yes.
Yeah, because now even if you look at the life of the Buddha, he had
Correct.
to let go and go away, looking what he wanted to do. But it was meant for everybody, but it had to be first done by him. That was a big
Absolutely.
struggle. But then
Absolutely.
that was the best he could have brought for his son. But it can be looked at as you have left the son, but really that's the best thing that a father could have done for a son.
And it is
What he
even
could offer to the son.
it's a worldwide thing. If you look at the airlines, when the oxygen mask drops, they say you first, your child second, right?
Absolutely.
You have to save yourself first. Then only you can save others.
Right. Thank you very much. And it was a very, very useful, very, very interesting, very useful topic. But we can't forget what Das Miriagala said. Any view or opinion, just it's not always there. I'm also not really there. So if you look at it with that intellectual understanding or wisdom, well, so the suffering is because of these two. Suffering is, of course, there. We can't deny that. But that doesn't mean we can't enjoy an ice cream or a cup of tea. But by learning how to stop the urge when it becomes unpleasant, it is useful, isn't it? Because, I mean, it is well known that if you eat or drink with sati, it will be tastier.
Yeah. Correct.
Shall we stop then? I'm wishing
Yes.
that Nadeesha gets well from her flu. You're a lot better than when you were in the morning, anyway, I think.
Yes.
I don't know whether the Dhamma talk that generated good karma has cured you. But shall we